actually working? Yes. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this wet and rainy day. It's a nice time to be all snuggled, cosy inside together. For those of you that haven't met me before, my name's Alicia Eugene, and I have had the privilege of being involved with this project right from the outset with Maclean Care. We have a very exciting program ahead for you today. I will just give people the heads up that we may be delayed at some point during the program. We are expecting Mr. Joyce to join us today, but he is running a little bit late. So we just give people that the heads up that the program might change a little bit to what you've perhaps seen in front of you. Now, before we get too far, I would like to acknowledge a couple of important guests today. We have Auntie Esther Gardner here representing the Kamilaroi people, and I will call her up shortly to do a welcome to country. I'd like to welcome, do we have Councillor Simon Murray here? No. He's an apology then from the Armidale Regional Council. We do have Councillor Anthony Michael, the Deputy Mayor from Inverell Regional Council. Thank you for coming. I'd also like to welcome and acknowledge Anna Maria Wade, the State Manager from AXA New South Wales and ACT. Thank you for coming and representing AXA today. I'd also like to acknowledge our friends from a variety of organisations that have supported the project. So particular acknowledgement to our now friends from Deakin University, our friends from the Business Chamber who've come today. Thank you for attending. Thank you also to a number of community organisations who've supported and are representing their organisations today. So we have the police, Rural Fire Brigade here, so thank you for coming. And of course, I would especially like to honour and acknowledge the participants who have been absolutely vital to this project. We could not have done this without you, and you will be acknowledged a couple of times today, I'm sure. A couple of housekeeping items. In case of any kind of emergency, fire, alien invasion, roof falling in, please head for the exits. So you can see the green running man. Head out through that door this side or back out through the front door where you came in. If you need to use the bathroom today, there are toilets located down this corridor here. And please help yourselves to the tea and coffee outside. I think most people have already made themselves comfortable and helped themselves to that. So without too much further ado, I would like to hand over to Auntie Esther for a formal welcome to country.
Hello everyone. That was a great welcome. My name's Esther Gardner. I'm an Aboriginal elder in the community, and as a descendant of the Kamilaroi people of this land, I would like to welcome you to Kamilaroi land, pay respect to elders past, present, and the emerging elders, and I hope that you enjoy your time in Inverell, and I hope that we all have an enjoyable day today. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Esther. I'd now like to call on a very important participant that we've had involved in our project. We talked about who might be appropriate to cut our very special Hector VR launch cake today, and the consensus was it was probably most appropriate to go to our oldest participant and our oldest driver who took part. So I would like to introduce Mrs. Tabor. If you could please come up, Mrs. Tabor, and do us the honours. On behalf of all of the participants who've been so important to this project. Yes, wherever you like. While the photos, all the cameras snap away. Lovely. Thank you. Much appreciated. We got there. I think the team is... Michael, would you like to... We're going to get that taken away and sliced up, so please make sure that you help yourselves to a slice of the delicious Hector cake later on. I'd now like to hand over to Sue Thompson, the Chief Executive Officer of Maclean Care, to give you a bit more of an overview of the project itself and why we did it and why it's so important.
Thanks, Alicia. So consider 185,000 square kilometres. And if you can just picture that for a moment, that's actually 6 times the size of Belgium and around 3 times the size of Tasmania. It's also the service delivery area for Maclean Care. So we service rural locations across the remoter parts of rural Northwest and New England, New South Wales, and Darling Downs in Queensland. So our footprint actually extends from Oakey in the north to Mungandai and Moree in the west, down to Wallabadar in the south, and across to Drake in the east. So that's quite an extensive service delivery area. And we also obviously service everywhere in between. And so as specialist rural service delivery organisation, we know firsthand the challenges of service delivery to older people in rural areas. And so I want you now to imagine a scenario in one of those rural locations where perhaps you or your parents or even your grandparents live in a small community about, 55 kilometres or so from a major centre. And so where you live, there is no public transport, there is no taxi and definitely no Uber. Your licence becomes key to your independence. And also, attached to that independence is your quality of life in so many different ways. It enables you to go to the shops, it enables you to go to medical appointments, it also enables you to visit family and friends. So it literally becomes part of the fabric of your everyday existence. It allows you to continue to be a member of your community. Suddenly then, you're over 80. And after a visit at your doctor, the doctor perhaps mentions to you that maybe we should have your licence reviewed. So imagine then the impact that that could have on you. Suddenly, perhaps you're actually contemplating, what does this actually mean for me? Is this really going to mean that I'm not going to be able to go to these appointments or be independent anymore? So suddenly I'm thinking my life is literally going to change so dramatically. So in order then to have this licence reviewed, you have to travel to a major centre where there's a specialist occupational therapist after you've been referred by a doctor to actually undergo quite an extensive assessment in a completely foreign town to which you're used to driving in. So there's many days and nights of worry, obviously, and for us, if we think about where you would have to travel, you would have to go to either Tamworth, Armidale, or Toowoomba if you're a resident in this local community, and if you don't actually live in Inverell, that's even further afield. So you're spending many days and nights worrying about what this actually is going to mean for you and what impact it's going to have in your life. Consider then that you actually have a partner as well who is actually ill and you're the primary carer. What is this going to mean for that relationship and for your future? Well, does that mean you have to move to residential aged care? Does it mean that you have to move away from the community and the house that you've shared with your partner for decades and perhaps life? We know that many older people are capable of driving safely well into their old age. And we also know that driving capacity does decline with age. But I don't know that we recognise how critical the licence is to independence and quality of life. And so the question we face essentially is, how do we provide people with that objective information that need to make informed choices about, do I keep my licence or do I relinquish my licence? Or do I need to undergo some sort of driver training to improve my confidence or skill level? So the question is really about what objective information or what services are available to assist people to do that. Here at Maclean Care, we are very lucky. We're an extremely lucky organisation to have a group of talented blue sky thinkers. And so innovation is part of our fabric as an organisation, and it's part of what we do, and we are always looking for opportunities. We're solutions focused, and we pride ourselves in finding it, seizing it and doing it. So we saw an opportunity for technology such as virtual reality to help older drivers make that important decision about driving. So we've actually trialled virtual reality technology here in our residential aged care facility in Inverell, and we were actually very, well in fact blown away really, by how much our residents enjoyed it and how they fully immersed themselves in it. So a funding round came out from the federal government late in 2016. And it was a technology-based funding round for aged care providers to apply for, to work on innovative projects for older Australians. So we were obviously very quick to submit an application for a bold new idea about how we could harness emerging virtual reality technology to help solve that question of how do we support older drivers to make informed decisions about driving competence. So against a competitive field of applicants from across Australia, Maclean Care was successful to get the go-ahead of one of only 6 projects were approved. So I'm immensely proud of the way our staff have stepped up to make this project such an incredible success. Our technology development partners, Deakin University, have become valued colleagues, and it is a relationship I'm sure will endure into the future. We've still got a lot of competition to go. I'm hugely grateful to our local community for supporting and embracing this project in the way they have, and we've had more than 50 older people from across our community who have put their hands up to trial this technology and be part of the research and development process that underpins this whole project. They've offered fantastic insights and improvement ideas and constructive feedback and quite often very sage advice. Every single one of them has challenged the stereotype that older people are not interested in new technology or unable to learn how to use it. It's quite the contrary. They've embraced the technology with gusto and picked it up remarkably well. Their input has helped to yield important Australia First research, not only about virtual reality technology, but also about road safety issues. And so we come back to our original question. How do we provide people with the objective information they need to make informed decisions about ongoing driving competence as they age? This finished product you will see today, Hector VR, offers a very real piece of answering that puzzle. Hector gives objective information about how well people are observing the common road rules, such as giving way at roundabouts. Hector can also give accurate information about reaction speeds by monitoring the driver's heart rate and show them driving scenarios that are most anxiety inducing. Although our research and testing still has a week or 2 to go, the preliminary results are already clear. The overwhelming majority of our participants in the development trials have confirmed that Hector VR does provide useful information about driving competence. In that regard, we certainly have achieved what we set out to do. But the Hector VR journey doesn't end here. Indeed, one might say the journey has only just begun. As we ponder broader road safety issues, it's clear that Hector has a potential range of much broader applications. And those applications can include younger people learning to drive, people learning to drive again after accidents, people impacted by disability learning to drive for the very first time, all within a very safe virtual environment. There's already been interest nationally and internationally about this homegrown product that has originated right here in Inverell in rural Australia, and we are so excited to see what that future holds. And I'd like to thank you all today for joining us to celebrate the launch of Hector VR into the next stage of road safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. That was a really useful oversight of some of the background and history about the why of Hector and also the what next for Hector. Can I now hand over to Ben Horan, who is the Associate Professor from the School of Engineering at Deakin University. And Deakin, as Sue mentioned, have been our technology partners for this project and are now our very valued colleagues.
Thank you, Alicia, for the introduction. As mentioned, I'm from Deakin University, located in Geelong, Victoria, where we specialise in the research and development of new virtual reality systems, focusing on harnessing the unique capability of virtual reality to improve best practice for different applications. To give some broader context about what I mean for different applications, I'd like us to consider a few. One project we embarked upon a while ago was to provide large classes of nursing and midwifery students with the ability to palpate contractions in a virtual pregnant patient, which you can imagine is a logistically difficult challenge to achieve in a lecture theatre at a university. Another very different project which we undertook was to provide better training for snakebite treatment, where a bandage needs to be applied to someone after they've been bitten, and to achieve the correct pressure for the pressure immobilisation technique to work. Or in the case here today of Hector VR, a driving simulator where drivers can safely and effectively drive at their own pace through a virtual town and on virtual highways, and receive valuable information about their own driving performance and use this to help inform decisions about driver licensing. We work with partner organisations such as Maclean Care and subject matter experts to see how virtual reality can help improve the way things are currently done. So Sue has spoken a little bit about the origins of the Hector VR project. I want to talk a little bit about the technology under the hood of Hector VR and what makes this research project so unique. But before I do, let's ponder why now. Virtual reality has long been the sought-after technology from science fiction, able to provide us with access to environments and scenarios which either don't exist or are difficult to access. Being able to do this provides us with many different opportunities. However, it wasn't until 2010 when the then 17-year-old Palmer Luckey, frustrated with the inadequacy of existing virtual reality headsets, headed to his parents' garage, armed with a roll of duct tape and numerous consumer electronics, and developed the first prototype of the Oculus Rift headset, the headset that we use with Hector VR. If we fast forward from 2010 to 2014, Oculus was acquired by Facebook, a company most of us will know, for $3 billion, and the rest is history. Low-cost consumer-grade virtual reality headsets are now a reality and enable us to develop virtual reality environments and scenarios which may not otherwise be possible. So now let's get back to what makes Hector VR unique and what makes him tick. When we partnered with Maclean Care in the second half of 2017, we were very excited to be working with an organisation who is innovative, forward-thinking, and a leader in the space, and a partner who had identified a real opportunity to be the first in the world to develop an advanced driving simulator specifically for older drivers. Like any good research project, this posed a number of challenges, but equally a number of opportunities, and let's talk about some of these. To make sure that the end product achieved its purpose, an important objective of the Hector VR project has been to involve the end user in the design and development of the simulator. Around the room today I can see many of the volunteers who generously contributed their time to helping us guide the development of the simulator, and for this we are very helpful. Aside from providing us invaluable feedback along the way, it's been thoroughly enjoyable to have members of the local community on the journey with us. Another important objective of this project was to develop the driving simulator which provides more interaction than just sight and sound that a virtual reality headset typically provides. We wanted to interact with more of our senses as we would when driving a real car. To do this, as you'll see later, Hector VR uses a real-world object or a Holden Captiva car shell, and combined with virtual reality forms a mixed reality driving simulator where we interact with more of the user's senses, and those that driving in Hector sit in a real car seat, interact with real controls and instruments, and hold a real car steering wheel. An important part of this is that we provide haptic feedback or force feedback to the user when we're using the steering wheel, so drivers feel the interaction between the wheel and the road like they would in a real-world situation. In order to provide drivers with an immersive driving experience, we need to drive around a virtual town. So in order to do this, our team, some of which were around the room, modelled the Inverell township in virtual reality. As you can imagine, modelling the finer details of a town of this size can be very labour intensive, and we needed to develop new techniques to convert a 2D map of Inverell from Google Maps into something with 3D geometry. So that was another innovation we undertook as part of this project. For the country highway scenarios, we wanted to develop a way where people can drive for as long as they would like, but we didn't want to sit there modelling kilometres and kilometres and kilometres of highway. So we developed an automatic method for procedurally generating the highway. So as we drive along, it replicates itself and we can change parameters as to how far people drive. Here today, Hector VR sits in the room next door as a testament to the value of the collaboration between innovative organisations like Maclean Care and leading research groups like ours at Deakin University. It's also demonstrative of how regional university like Deakin and rural organisations such as Maclean Care can work together to develop a new technology which will have impact to our communities and be competitive on a world stage. As Sue has mentioned, we see Hector VR as not just a simulator for aged drivers, but having potential future uses across different demographics and different applications, including driver training for young drivers, and we look forward to continuing to share those project updates with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, and also acknowledging the rest of the team who've made the trip up from Melbourne or from Victoria to join us today, who are in the room. So thank you also to the rest of the team from Deakin. We really appreciate the partnership and your effort in being here today also. I'd now like to, thank you. I'd now like to hand over to Dr. David Hallowell, who is the Director of Research Partnerships at Deakin University.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to use a little bit of technology. Just be one moment. It's kind of old tech compared to what's next door, but still takes a little bit of getting used to. He's got a PhD, but it's in... I'll start and I'll see if they catch up with the technology, but it's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you all for coming, and thanks to Maclean for inviting us along and for partnering with us. You know, Deakin is a very practical university, and you know, universities at their core really only have two main objectives. One is educating students for the jobs of tomorrow, and I think some of the technology you're going to see here today is really about the jobs of tomorrow, but it's today. And the other thing is research that makes a difference, and you know, we talk about that in a very industry applied sense. So traditionally at universities, and I'm actually new to the university sector, I come from the industry side of research, but traditionally publications are what drives academic performance and promotion, and that tends to be the end game for many academics. And you know, Deakin University, whilst publications are still important in the university system and we can't get away from that, we view them as part of the journey, and the real end game is the outcome or impact that that research delivers to the community, and that's really what Deakin's all about. And our Chancellor is very committed to Deakin being, you know, the most industry engaged university. We're actually quite a large university these days. We've got about 60,000 students. That puts us about 6th largest in the country. There's about 40 universities in Australia, if you don't know. And we are a regionally based university. We've got 2 campuses in Geelong. We've got a campus down at Warrnambool in the southwest of Victoria. We've got a campus in Burwood, which is sort of the eastern side of Melbourne, and we also have a growing campus. We call it the Cloud Campus. There's about 14,000 students in the Cloud Campus these days, or online learning. I have to say the Cloud, or my Vice-Chancellor won't be happy, but it's online learning. And so we are quite diverse, and almost a quarter of our student population are international students these days, roughly about a third from China, a third from India, and a third from the rest of the world. And you know, international education is a big industry for this country. It's 3rd biggest exporter. It's the largest exporter in Victoria. So it is a big industry. So that's the university, and we on the research front focus around 4 themes. And so improving health and wellbeing. We've got a very strong health faculty at Deakin, and increasingly that faculty is working more with engineering and other areas around, you know, medical technologies and 3D printed hips and body parts and those kinds of things. There's a lot of overlap between the disciplines these days. Designing smarter technologies, enabling a sustainable world and advancing society. And I think about this project, and for me it sort of hits on at least 3 of those themes. It's really multidisciplinary and across sectors. And there's a whole lot of things that we've done. I mean, as I mentioned our health faculty before, they're actually ranked #1 in the world in sports science of all universities. There's about 40,000 universities globally. So that's pretty impressive. But the other thing that I think universities will be increasingly judged on is their employment outcomes for graduates, and Deakin sit 3rd in terms of ranks of employment outcomes. And I think the more we work with industry, and I use that term very broadly from government, private, not-for-profit sectors, but the more connected we are, the more employable our graduates are, the more real-world experience they get as they're learning their degrees, and the more likely they are to be employed at the end of it. And certainly we're putting a lot of emphasis on that. So Ben mentioned a couple of these already. I just thought I'd show a sampling of some of the things that we are doing. We've got a very large microgrid project in partnership with AusNet at our Warren Ponds campus in Geelong. So that's going to put in just over 7 megawatt solar farm. There's going to be a whole lot of other renewable technologies tested on that. There's a bit of self-interest in this. I think our power bill at that campus is about $2 million a year. As you all know, power bills have gone up quite significantly the last few years. So part of it's about driving down our own power costs, and part of it's about demonstrating these new technologies that can work out there in the community. Ben mentioned, that was a really nice segue, Ben, thanks, the midwifery project. So that's the 3D printed midwife or dummy there you can see, but you can see in the background what it actually looks like in the virtual world. So I actually have had a go at this one. It's funny, I show a lot of people all of this technology through the university. I rarely get to actually play with it myself. I'm always sort of, other people are in the driver's seat. And even Hector, I haven't had a turn yet, but I think Ben's promised me one this afternoon, so I'm looking forward to it. And then we've done a similar thing around firefighting. So we've actually spun a company out of the university now called Flame, which is about firefighter training in the virtual world. So that actually started looking at fighting fires on ships for the Navy, and then that moved more generically into firefighter training more broadly. So you can put on this haptics headset. In fact, I've got an 8-year-old daughter who's had all of this gear on, including the oxygen tank on her back, fighting the virtual fire with the haptic fire hose. As you open the water, you can feel more pressure in the hose, and that's now, as I say, a commercial company that's spun out of the university. We do a lot more work in the agriculture space these days. We're a technology university, but we certainly apply technology to agriculture. So looking at things like climate models and suitability of land for different industries as we go forward. So there's a whole area of work around that. Also running a program called Spark, which is for young entrepreneurs, and so we bring out a person from California, from Silicon Valley, to run these kind of boot camp weekends for young people, or not just for young people, for anyone really who's interested in starting up their own enterprise and the things they need to consider. And Ben also mentioned the snakebite trainer for Melbourne Water, so that's a portable snakebite VR training kit, which has been really successful. So our Warren Ponds campus is really our sort of flagship in terms of partnership with industry. We've got more than 20 companies on site now, and there's about 2,000 jobs that have been created on that campus out of Geelong. So, Geelong, like many regional areas, went through a decline. It's traditionally a manufacturing town, but we had Ford Motor Company move out of the town. Alcoa closed down their operations. They were 2 of the biggest employers in the town. But it's really hit a resurgence the last few years in terms of it's taken a bit of a technology and innovation drive, and Deakin's been a big part of that. We are a big employer in the region, but there's also a whole lot of other agencies that have moved into the region now, and a lot of SMEs that are really changed tact in terms of their focus. Still manufacturing businesses, but just making different things for different regions. And so if you ever get the chance to come down to Geelong, you're most welcome to come out to our campus, and we do have a lot of people through the campus, and particularly through Ben's lab, the VR lab. He's got his VR cave in there and a whole lot of great technology in there that's really worth having a look at as well. But sort of back to today a little bit, I mean, universities get a bad rap, I think, in terms of engaging with industry, and it's true that there are a lot of researchers that just have no exposure to it and are in their sort of little academic world and are just really focused on producing papers. But engaging with industry is not a big paradigm shift for researchers. It's really just about finding that intersection between all the needs that the community have out there and the capability that we bring to the table. And that's really part of my job, is to ask the right questions, explore what those issues are, and identify those kind of industry-driven problems, because we know straight away, as soon as we're working on industry-driven problems, that we're going to have high uptake at the other end of it, because it's a needs-driven approach. It's not a sort of technology push from researchers. And so that's really the space that I work in mostly. Certainly the space Deacon's getting more and more into, and I think this project is a really excellent example of something that's needs-driven, but a really great intersection between community need and the technology and capability we have at the university that can help deliver a solution to that. So it's great to see everyone here today. I don't know if everyone's had a play yet or not, but I hope you get a chance to experience it. Even my kids, there's some really low-tech VR, a thing called a Google Cardboard, which some of you may have seen that you can just use with your smartphone. And my kids, that was their first experience with VR, and I can't get my phone back off them when they get the cardboard on my phone. But it's a $5 piece of cardboard that turns your phone into a virtual reality device, and it's a great way to experience the world. So I certainly encourage you to have a go if you haven't. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. That was a really great overview of the university, and I guess also highlights for us just what a privilege it's been to partner with a university that's so progressive, so forward-thinking, but also, really interested in a solutions-driven approach that is about solving the issues of the real world. So thank you very much, David. I'd now like to hand over to Manuel Mazaros, who is the chair of the Maclean Care Board, just to give a final perspective, I guess, from the Maclean Care perspective about why this project has been so important and so integral to the way the organisation operates.
Thank you, Alicia, for the introduction. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. That's a quote from Steve Jobs. What makes a good day for you is a quote from Maclean Care. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Maclean Care, I want to welcome and thank you for being here today on this special day. There are so many people and so many organisations that have been on this journey together with us to thank. To the great team at Deakin University, to the federal government for their support with the funding, to the many volunteers, community volunteers, to help testing the simulator, and of course our team here at Maclean Care, thank you. I'm truly honoured to be part of the Hector VR journey. When I joined the board 4 years ago, I saw myself as bringing new and fresh ideas, and also to join an organisation that's growing and adapting and going from strength to strength. Today I stand here and see an organisation that does exactly that. At the centre of Maclean Care model of care is each individual person, and at the core of the model are fundamental approaches that we take to ensure that all our care we provide is individual and personal centred. The Maclean Care Sapphire model of personal centred care was developed to ensure that as a collective we deliver what we say we will do. Maclean Care over the years have changed. We began back in 1953 with the completion of a convalescent hospital from a bequest from Hector Neil Maclean, and we've grown to become one of the largest providers in the northwest region of New South Wales and the Darling Downs region of Queensland. Today, Maclean Care provides services to over 1,250 people in an area that, as Sue has mentioned, of over 185,000 square kilometres and employing over 350 staff. We have met all accreditation, certification, quality reporting and legislative requirements for all our funded programs. And we've been recognised on a regional basis as a leader in the provision of innovative and evidence-based aged care services. The aged care sector has undergone an amazing rate of change in recent years and continues to do so. The sector is under constant change in regulation and legislation, and the pace of the change is frantic and at times a challenge. The culture of McLean Care, however, is to meet the challenges head on and use this as our strength. At times, this type of workload is hard to manage, and it's hard sometimes to imagine how we still have the time to be innovative, but that's what makes us a leader in the aged care services. I'm proud to say that the team at McLean Care have risen to meet every challenge head on. We have the resources, we have the resilience to which to meet and surpass these challenges and changes. It is one thing to react to a change, but it's another thing altogether to look at these changes as an opportunity to do what we do, but to do it better. And hence, Hector VR is a testament to this. So why Hector VR? Personally, I believe we take it for granted sometimes, the freedom which we experience. Hector VR can give back some of this freedom to be able to drive with confidence, to be able to practice with safety. It helps us drive the aged care journey together, taking away some of our boundaries, and this is what makes a good day for me. McLean Care has always held up as a proud community asset. So when we ask you what makes a good day for you, we are truly listening and delivering. And to be part of this journey, I see this as an honour. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. I think it's very important that the board have been so supportive of a project like this. It can't succeed without that support from the highest level, so that's also been integral to the success of the project. Who's excited to actually see Hector? Got some people in the room that want to see what we're all talking about. Fantastic. All right. Well, on that note, I would like to hand back to Ben. Obviously, it's not logistically possible for us to get everybody into that tiny little room, but I'm going to hand over to Ben, and he's going to take you on a bit of the Hector VR journey on the big screen.
Thank you again, Alicia. So, as mentioned, it is logistically challenging to get everybody into the room, but of course, if you have the opportunity to come back at a later date, you can have a tour and try Hector for yourself. So, I'm a bit nervous after the remote control incident before. This is all going to work as planned, but let's see how it goes. Fingers crossed. We're going to start with a video that we created showing some of the Hector journey. So, I believe that will appear on the screens now. Almost. They say 10 seconds on stage is like a year when everybody's looking at you. So what you're seeing now is a driving scenario as well as the infrared.
Meet Hector, the world's first fully immersive virtual reality driving simulator. Named in honour of McLean Care's founding forefather, Hector McLean. Hector is funded by the Department of Health and McLean Care, and is the result of a collaborative partnership between Deakin University School of Engineering and McLean Care.
In 2017, we were approached by McLean Care to work on an ambitious project to develop a virtual reality driving simulator for aged drivers. Hector, the virtual reality driving simulator, is very much different from the other simulators that are out there. There are a number of reasons for this. One is that it's targeted at aged drivers, so they can drive around the virtual environment in order to practice and get feedback as to their driving competency. Hector's also unique because we've used an actual car as the basis for which to sit in when driving in virtual reality. This forms a mixed reality driving experience where people can see and hear virtual information, but feel real things from the real car.
My driver's licence is very important because I'm independent when I can drive. I don't have to worry about calling on anybody, and that's why I want to keep my licence as long as I can. Hector, at the point it is very helpful. It can show you if you've got any problems with driving. In fact, I felt it was that good. I thought I was only having a practice run and I was worried that it was over. They told me it was over. And I wanted to go further.
So that's a video showing you some of the journey. Now what we're going to do is change over to show you a live demonstration from the room next door. While we set that up, Alicia's going to talk a little bit about how we involve participants to help guide us along the journey and make sure we got things right. So hand over to Alicia briefly.
Good morning again. So as you've already heard this morning, this project was made possible through a significant funding grant from the Department of Health. One of the original aspects of our proposal was a formal research component to complement the development process and to provide useful information about issues of relevance to older drivers in Australia. As with any major research project, we went through a detailed planning process and then submitted it for ethics approval. I'm pleased to say we essentially passed with flying colours, which means that they only required one minor change to one of our forms, which is pretty significant actually. Usually ethics approval is a painstaking process, but we got through very quickly, which is a testament to the robust design process that we put around the research. Right from the outset, we knew that we wanted to design a product not only for older people, but very importantly, we wanted to design it with them. To this end, we wanted older people's input throughout all aspects of the project. I will admit, however, that we were a little bit nervous at the start. Would people actually be interested? Were the stereotypes about older people rejecting technology true? Would we get anybody from the local community who was willing to volunteer to help us test this new technology? Or would everyone in the local community think we were completely nuts? I'm pleased to say that our fears were totally unfounded. At our Try VR Day, which we held at the Inverell RSM Club, we had a steady stream of people coming through the doors, trying a number of the VR programs and designs that David showcased earlier. People got hands-on, trying the midwifery one, doing all sorts of virtual experiences. Thankfully, a number of people also signed up to help us with our trial. Our research has been split into 3 phases, what we've called alpha, beta and final release. We had staggered commencement points for participants so that we could have continual feedback and comparison cycles. By the time the project is finished, I'm pleased to say we will have had more than 50 people from the local community who have so generously volunteered their time to be part of the testing and research project with us. Each of them have been involved in completing pre and post surveys. They've come in and actually driven Hector along various courses, and they'll also participate at the end in some focus group discussions and conversations. The amazing team from Deakin at the end of each of those phases have taken back the feedback that people have so generously shared with us. A lot of it has been very constructive around some design features of the car itself, others about the graphics, others about more practical aspects of the project. All of it incredibly useful. The team then transported Hector on the back of a truck down to the lab in the university in Geelong and made modifications and adaptations based directly on that feedback that our participants gave us. Our preliminary, I don't have time to go into all of the detailed results here today, but I can say the following. Our preliminary results have highlighted that almost all participants would use Hector again in the future if they wanted to know more about their driving competence. Let me say that again. The overwhelming majority of participants have confirmed that they would use Hector to know about their driving competence. This is a particularly significant result because it means that we have essentially achieved what we set out to do, to build a driving simulator that would provide objective and useful information to drivers about their competence and their driving performance. In addition to this headline result, some participants also reported that they would like to use Hector for driving practice or just for fun. Our research has also helped us to actually quantify what we experientially knew to be true anyway. Driving is absolutely regarded as key to independence for older people in rural Australia. The results of this project will be of significant interest and relevance within the technology and VR sector, and for other researchers looking to work with older people and VR in the future. I know our colleagues from Deakin are very excited about sharing this research more broadly. We told participants at the beginning of this project that one of the benefits of being involved was having bragging rights about being part of an Australian First project. This is indeed the case. Your participation has been absolutely critical to the design process, and as has already been expressed by a number of the other speakers this morning, we are immensely grateful to you for all of your support and all of your feedback and all of the laughs and all of those lovely conversations that we've had with all of you. It has been an absolute pleasure. This project could not have succeeded without you. Thank you again.
Okay, so now we're going to switch over to the live feed that I promised of Michael, one of the key engineers who was involved in designing Hector. And what we have a picture of what Michael's seeing in the virtual reality headset. Now, I do need to say, it's one thing to see it on a screen like this. It's an entirely another thing to be wearing a virtual reality headset, as Bill and friends are nodding to. And we also have a view of Michael from a camera as well. So I may need to move this to the side so I can talk to what's happening. So Michael's driving along. He's currently exceeding the speed limit. I'm not too sure whether that's Michael. Oh, okay, so he's under the speed limit. Okay, that's good. I was going to make a joke about Michael having a Victorian driver's licence, but nonetheless. So now he's approaching a stop sign. As we know, we need to come to a complete stop, and I'm not sure Michael did. Oh, he did, okay. He slowed right down, so he's doing quite well. Not too much to criticise here, and driving along. So this is a country driving scenario, as you can see, country type environment. Michael has a detour. He needs to turn left. And as he's driving and steering the steering wheel, he can feed feedback coming from the virtual environment as well. So now Michael's approaching the township. For the purposes of this demonstration, it's not geographically correct, but we wanted to demonstrate both a country driving scenario and the town. So some of the things at Maclean were really, that were not optional, was to make sure that we had the reverse angle parking, which for us Victorians is really, really hard to master. Hopefully we'll get there eventually. The street lights in the street and the shops and so on. Michael, I think, has just crashed into a car. Fortunately, there's no excess applying here in virtual reality. So I think that gives you an idea of, and I think he just drove on the footpath as well. So it is a bit tongue-in-cheek to show you that these things can happen. Now, this is all being recorded and monitored, so at the end people get a printout with how well they did according to certain metrics. Okay, so does anybody recognise the streets Mike was driving in? So Byron Street and Otho Street as well. And now I think he's exceeding the speed limit. I think he's at 40, so he's 2 over. So certainly breaking the law. So when Michael's steering, he's using the steering wheel, he's using the pedal, the accelerator pedal and the brake. He's using the indicators in the real car, so it is very easy to go from a real car to the simulator. There's a very low barrier to entry in that regards. So our team had to pay a lot of attention to detail to make sure that we have the trees, road markings, signs, all that sort of thing. And we have to say it's quite amazing to go through this design process and then come back to the town and see how the two relate. And so now we've reached the end of our thing, and we can see Michael has failed in the 40 km/h zone. So there's one fine, and I'm not sure how many demerit points, and so on. But that's some of the information that's provided back to participants at the end. There are others in terms of heart rate, which mentioned earlier, to see how people are anxiety about different driving situations. And really this is just the beginning, developing a platform which lends itself to all sorts of driving scenarios for all sorts of different demographics. So as Alicia mentioned earlier, we are now waiting eagerly for the Honourable Barnaby Joyce to join us. But while we do that, we're going to have a short panel session, I believe, to give people in the audience the opportunity to ask us questions about this project, about virtual reality and this type of technology in general. So I'll hand back over to Alicia.
Lovely. Not really fond of microphones, but we'll see how we go. Can I just ask our panel to... We've lost the... No, we're good. Can I invite Ben to come back over? Do you want to stay seated? Yeah, Ben, do you... So Bill, in our video, he's also going to... Is that better? Yeah, okay. Who's going to give us a really valuable participant perspective. Is there anyone in the room that would like to ask the panel a question? I've got a few I want to ask them too. Room that would like to start us off? Oh, up the back. Thank you.
What have been some of the highlights of the Hector VR journey?
Thank you. What have been some of the highlights of this experience? Anyone want to answer first?
Well, to me, the highlights of...
If you just hold it apparently at the top rather than the top. Yeah, thank you.
Right. The highlights to me have been of being able to take part in this new technology, which I really think is going to be a great plus for elderly people.
I guess from McLean Care's perspective, it's been the whole lot's been a highlight. It's been a fabulous journey, but to actually realise a vision is incredibly rewarding, and just seeing the benefit that this technology actually has had on participants and thinking about what it will have on older people and younger people in the future. It's just, the whole lot has been just an amazing journey.
Yeah, thank you. I think they're fantastic responses. And from the technology perspective and from working in a university, a key requirement in a university is to contribute to the body of knowledge in research. And for us, we can sit in our labs and do research for research's sake, but having a real problem from a real subject matter expert with a real world solution is the type of project that we'd always ideally like to work on. So that's been the real highlight for us, to start with a vision that originated from here at McLean Care, go along that journey, starting out with lots of question marks and starting to cross them off and ending up with something that in the end works and is a world first, and will hopefully lead to other people doing all sorts of other things with similar technologies for similar applications.
All right. Are there other questions? Thank you.
You keep mentioning that it's a world first. So what's been some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome being a world first?
Yeah, thanks. It's a really good question. So I think there are a couple of reasons it's a world first. Virtual reality, as I was mentioning earlier, hasn't been possible for most people until recently because the technology just hasn't been available. So it's hardware technology such as headsets, software technology which has been driven by the computer gaming industry. So we use the Unity gaming engine, for instance, wasn't at the level of maturity it is now until very recently, as well as really identifying the need and bringing it together. So here we realise that if we want to make an immersive virtual reality experience, it needs to be mixed reality. There are driving simulators out there which use screens and perhaps a VR headset can be added, but feeling like you're in a car and all that other interaction really raises the level of immersion. It also reduces the reluctance to trying to drive and use this type of technology as well. Some of the more subtle differences in how we approach modelling the town. Had we modelled the town, to give you some perspective, when you watch a film like Avatar, there's a lot of animation. You have hundreds of modellers working there, modelling the finer details. For this scale project, had we have taken that approach, it would have been prohibitive. So we developed new techniques to be able to semi-automate the process of converting a 2D map into 3D geometries and then only really need to go over the surface layer to make it look a certain way. So the combination of these things, as well as force feedback from the steering wheel as well. So we had to approach that in a particular way. And then I think on top of that, it's doing things in such a way that it can be replicated to be low cost. So it's something we try to do in all of our projects, whether it's the midwifery project, the snake pry project. If we do something that is high tech but also costs a lot of money to replicate, so the unit cost is too high, nobody will ever adopt it. Here, by using an existing car and tapping into a lot of the existing sensory systems, we could bring the cost right down. So it probably won't be affordable for an individual to buy a unit in the future, but benchmarked against other simulators out there, we have more features and the unit cost is a lot lower than others.
Other questions from the audience? Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Jeff Johnson. I'm representing Invera Legacy. As an older person, I'm very interested in this, but one of the big problems I see of a lot of these programs is that it requires the people who need the help to go to wherever it is. I think that's the wrong way around. I think you've got to concentrate on an approach where it comes to the person who needs help. And I think those sort of programs work well. That overcoming social isolation is a real problem, and I think this technology is brilliant, but it still doesn't overcome that problem. Do you have any comment about that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, excellent point. Hector is designed so that he's actually fully transportable, and so in fact we can transport Hector to any location. So that's another feature of him that we're also, we probably haven't really necessarily highlighted, but that was one of the things when we were thinking, you know, in the design process, that we have to make sure that he is fully mobile, because you know obviously our service area is such that we want to make it available to other people. Yeah.
I think to add to Sue, it's a fantastic point, and we, I guess, saw this project as the first step, realising the technology that can do what we would like it to do. But in that, we did design, it's not obvious, but the car can be split into two, so it can be taken apart and entered via a standard doorway. In terms of supporting infrastructure, it's really just power. So as long as there's power and the ability to get Hector, which weighs a couple of 100 kilograms, to a location, he can be taken around. So we have lots of aspirations for where this could go. It depends on resourcing and support perhaps from the private industry, or more governmental support. That, you know, there's no reason why hypothetically Hector could go in the back of a trailer or a bus or something and be taken to other people as well. But it's a very valid point. Virtual reality technology does enable things to be mobile. So David Halliwell was talking earlier about add-ons to mobile phones which turn them into a virtual reality headset. The downside to an approach like that would be we'd lose the mixed reality component, so we wouldn't have a steering wheel, we wouldn't have pedals. But that's perhaps another option that could be explored, taking a light version of the experience which could be accessed by people on their mobile phones perhaps, and do pre-training in that, and then if they're given the opportunity to access Hector here or at a designated location, to go through the more immersive experience. Yeah, I think, as you point out, Dave, there's probably a middle ground too. So a lot of the virtual reality technologies have come about because of the gaming subculture, which I didn't know too much about, because contrary to what you might think, I don't play too many computer games, but Michael does. But virtual reality headsets came about because there was a demand, and it drove the cost down. The computer graphics cards, and as well as steering wheels and pedals for driving games. So Things like the PlayStation now have a virtual reality headset, so it's entirely possible if there was commercial interest out there that the technology could be incorporated into something like the PlayStation system, so you have somewhere in the middle between the fully fledged simulator and a fully mobile one that runs on your mobile phone. So it's certainly a possibility.
I was just going to add to the other comments that part of Hector's design is it's not necessarily a very expensive process, and that was part of the other key components when looking at design is to make sure that the cost is not prohibitive. So for replication purposes, this is actually a prototype. Looking at potential funding options for the future, he's easily replicated.
That actually leads me to one of the questions that I had, which was, we know that Hector's now installed in his lovely room next door. Is he there just for the residents here, or is he accessible to people in the broader community?
Hector's most definitely accessible to the broader community, and that broader community can be anywhere nationally. So he's definitely accessible. Yeah.
And people in the local community, if they want to come and have a try, people go back and say, "Oh, I've got a grandchild or a brother or a sister or a grandma who would like to come and have a turn." How do they do that?
So we're still in the final testing phase at the moment, and obviously there's still a little bit of work to be done, and we anticipate that in early 2019 we'll be able to have a proper structured approach where indeed that can actually happen, and we probably will have a little setup a little while later for people to indicate their interest, and so in early 2019 we can then start making contact with people that would like to continue the journey with Hector or start a new journey with Hector. So by all means, and as I said before, it's not just for the local Inverell community, it's for the broader community as well.
Are there any other questions in the audience?
Mine's more of a comment than a question. As one of the people in the community who's not enjoying getting older, I've had some health issues and I was starting to feel very insecure with driving at times, and the opportunity to come here and use Hector, although excuse me, I didn't quite make the grade through the whole process because I became quite car sick, I went away feeling that my skills were still quite alert and capable of continuing to drive.
Thank you for sharing that, and that's certainly the type of the comment that we've heard, and it's one of the wonderful benefits of Hector is affirming people's, or uplifting people's confidence, which is wonderful. Are there any other questions in the audience? I've got a couple I want to ask, but are there? Yes.
Yes, I can see this technology not only benefiting the elderly but the youth as well. We do run youth awareness driver education days around the areas, and I think by being able to put the youth behind this would also enlighten them to what their skills are and what skills are needed to actually drive the vehicles.
That's really exciting, and that's the kind of partnership we are hoping for in the future. Are there other questions?
With persons who wish to have nighttime driving, would it be possible that this might be a help?
That's a really good question. Want to answer that about nighttime driving?
I think that's a fantastic question, and also perhaps extends to different weather conditions as well, and creating those, whether it be for older drivers or younger drivers. And we know with younger drivers, for instance, sometimes parents are reluctant to take them to practice driving because the conditions are poor, when in fact they need that experience. So currently we don't have a nighttime driving scenario within Hector. However, Hector's a platform, and lots of different things can be added. So we certainly see moving forward adding different scenarios. things like, as well, quite relevant to this area, kangaroos and things, how to deal with that rather than encountering it for the first time on the road. So certainly in virtual reality, changing a daytime scenario to a nighttime scenario and having reduced visibility is something that virtual reality really lends itself to. So we hope to be able to do that in the future. But yeah, fantastic question. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that has a question for our panel? Yep, at the back again.
So looking at what we've seen, you've got the force feedback happening with the steering wheel and that sort of stuff, but is there what's the inertia feel for slowing down, speeding up, the tail spinning out or anything like that? And if there's not, is there plans to integrate that into the current technology?
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a fantastic question. And so this is something we've been debating the whole way along. So do we have a motion platform to give the feeling of slowing down and speeding up? And one of the challenges in this emerging space is that there's no literature yet supporting how effective it is. So again, in the gaming market, enthusiasts do have very elaborate setups at home, and sometimes you see them in amusement parks where you move around a little bit. Here, keeping with the ethos of keeping the cost low and the complexity low, and then keeping in mind that it's not feasible to expect an organisation to have a VR expert on site to make sure that things are calibrated. We wanted to make it, you turn the key and it goes. We haven't, but it's something on our mind. We're thinking it might be, what we've realised, and I guess we haven't touched upon it yet, is there isn't too much in the literature showing the effectiveness of this type of technology, and throughout the research we have been collecting those results, anonymously of course, and we're hoping to publish that and put it into the open domain so that people coming along can learn from what has happened here at Maclean Care and apply that to different applications they want to perform. So for us, we're toying whether, if there was a second stage, whether that's something we'd include, but it'd probably double the cost of the simulator, and it introduces an OH&S issue as well because you have a moving seat. The literature doesn't suggest how much motion you need to provide for realism, so it's something that there's a question mark around, and we haven't quite worked with it yet. But yeah, and I think you make a fantastic point, David. We do have, in other projects, quite advanced motion simulation platforms, ranging from a Stewart platform, which can move slightly, to a large robot arm that throws you around, and perhaps we could use that as Hector as a benchmark, or vice versa, to see the impact. And we're always looking for those sorts of research questions. So if you know funding sources that want to fund it, please give them our details. Thank you.
If I may take actually the last question, which is, I don't know if people have heard, but there is a rumour of a Mad Max association with this project, and I think that would be a really nice note for Sue to finish on. It's part.
Some of you may or may not be aware of John Baker in Hot Rod Lane. Does that ring a bell to anybody? No. John Baker's a local builder, in fact, but he also builds hot rod cars in Hot Rod Lane. He also built 2 cars for the latest Mad Max film, I think, which 2008 aired. And I think he was very distressed because they blew them all up. But John actually sourced the Captiva for us and cut down the Captiva, took the engine out and done a lot of work, and actually worked with Deakin as well to make sure all was okay to fit the technology. So we originally wanted to name Hector Max, but we weren't prepared to take on Warner Brothers and the like. So we decided to just go with Hector. Yeah.
And when Sue, you know, as we mentioned, the relationship has really grown between Deakin and McLean Care. But when Sue said we have the Mad Max car designers designing Hector, or the car for the simulator, we were quite worried that it was going to be quite apocalyptic and scare people away. But fortunately, they didn't do that, and we have Hector as he stands today.
Can we have a round of applause for our panel, please? I think they've been very insightful. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce the Honourable Barnaby, the member for New England. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. And first thing, I'm not going to apologise. We have an agricultural day today where it's called the Green Shirt Day, and I've been sent this beautiful green shirt, which apparently I've got to wear for the day. I don't know how it all works, but it comes with a ear tag. I'm glad the ear tag is in my collar and not in my ear. But look, this is one of the first, or I think the first, in Australia, and it's so good to have it here in Inverell. We put about, at a federal level, about $750,000 towards it, and it's been utilising a lot of people from the Inverell area and from other areas from Tamworth in developing the technology in this. What I believe is so important about this is my father is 94, my mother is 87, they both still drive. And you know, their minds are sharp and their body's obviously starting to fail a bit. But without, especially in remote areas, without their capacity to drive, they lose all independence. That's it. And where they live and how they live completely changes. And whatever we can do to assist people to have as much independence for as long as possible is both advantageous and desirable for them, and also saves an awful lot of money for the taxpayer. It's a win-win situation. So you know, this I think is so important. We have, if you were born today, you have a 1 in 3 chance of living to be 100 years old, and that's the new world we're living in. Average age is climbing all the time. If you were born in 1900, the average age, the most likely age you would die at, the average age of death was 48 years old. So we've advanced a bit from then. The reason pensions started at 55 is because they didn't believe many people were going to get there. Before closer settlement, before basically European settlement in Australia, the average age of death for Indigenous people, 28 years old. So what we're having now is a whole heap of basically afflictions that would otherwise never be seen are becoming more apparent by reason we're just living a lot longer. And so we have to design a society that is able to deal with this reality, and we're so lucky that it is. I'm really like the idea I got past 48. It really pleases me. And I want a few more years in front of me as well. Manuel and Sue, thank you very much for all the work you've done in this space. I know that even now this is collecting interest from other parts of the world, especially Canada, and to seeing what we're doing here in Inverell and how they could apply the same technology and use it themselves. And I'm looking forward to going next door and seeing how many times I can stack a car. So anyway, thank you very much for all your support. It's great to be here. It's great to see this brought about. All the best and God bless.
Thank you very much. As we mentioned, we have now the exciting part of officially launching Hector. So we're going to invite the Honourable Mr Joyce to head next door with our team, and they're going to get him seated in Hector. We'll be able to see him on the on the screen, and he's going to drive through. We thought very appropriate to the Hector journey that the launch will actually be driving through in the virtual world, driving through a ribbon. So instead of cutting the ribbon, he's going to drive through the ribbon. So we'll see how this goes. We invite Ben and Sue to head in there as well. Thank you. Okay, so what you can see is Mr. Joyce driving, and this is what he can see driving down the main street in Inverell. Yeah, we'll see how many cars he takes out on the way through, shall we? Doing very well so far. Oh, here we go. Here's the ribbon. Straight through. Fantastic. All right. So Hector is now officially launched. So on behalf of all of the team here at McLean Care who've made today happen, thank you so much for coming. We've greatly appreciated your attendance here today, your support of the project, and your fantastic questions. Please feel free to head outside and have some more morning tea, help yourself to some Hector cake. You're also welcome to get a selfie with Hector on the way out the door if you're that way inclined. But thank you again. We look forward to your continued support, and if you do want to put your name down or recommend family to sign the register of interest for next year, please see Heidi on the way out the door. She will have a slip and we can get in touch with you in the new year. So thank you again and travel safely.